welcome back into Clay and Buck. We got Congressman Chip Roy with us now. Sorry, I got my guest time slots confused here, but he's fantastic, and we appreciate him being here with us. Congressman Roy, appreciate you, and let's talk about this. Why are your colleagues all of a sudden taking these taxpayer-funded boondoggles down to El Salvador? What do they think they're going to prove with this?
Well, I was kind of hoping we were going to talk about A&M and UT baseball in Austin, but we'll get to that in a little bit. But look, we've got my Democratic colleagues are doing what they do best right now, and what I mean by that is they very much believe, and I believe they mean this. They believe that non-citizens should vote. They believe that non-citizens should be able to flood into the United States, frankly, at whatever level they see fit, regardless of the law. And they believe that they're in better standing to try to go defend somebody who has very obvious ties to MS-13, with two courts having acknowledged that very strong reality or likelihood. And they're fine going down to try to defend them rather than standing up for the Americans who were hurt. Now, I mean, a lot of people have been saying this. I mean, there's nothing new about what I'm saying. But, look, I got to be very personal here. When I've gotten to know Alexis Nungare, the wonderful 28-year-old woman whose daughter Jocelyn was murdered last summer by Tren de Aragua outside of Houston, that's a real person, a real individual who lost their life directly as a consequence of the people released into our country. And now Democrats want to go to El Salvador to hold up as the poster child an individual who has an order of removal, who was had his wife file charges against him, who was stopped transporting a carload of illegals in a car, and who has known affiliation with MS-13. And that is the poster child for who Democrats would have put front and center, not Rachel Moran and her family, not Jocelyn Nungare's family, not Kayla Hamilton's family. And that's how out of touch Democrats are. But the good news is President Trump is trying to do the right thing, and Republicans in Congress, hopefully, are waking up to try to support what President Trump is doing.
How much of this is just a big structural issue? We were talking earlier in the show, Congressman, about the fact that this is just basically a math problem. If Biden is going to have, as he did, let in around 10 million illegals, and if you look at the rate with which Trump is able to deport, let's say he's going to be able to get 350,000 people from inside the country out, basic math would say it would take 30 years of that to get the 10 million that just came in the last 4 years, to say nothing of all the people who've come in before. How much of this is structural in that the president has to have the ability to get people out of the country as easily as the prior president had to let people into the country? That's the real battle here in essence, isn't it?
Yeah, that's very well stated. And so for those of us who in 2019, 2020, even under the Trump administration, who was dealing with the complexities of the law to try to secure the border himself, and ultimately COVID was a part of that as well. But then all through the Biden administration, when we were all saying, guys, they're doing this on purpose. They're violating and abusing parole and asylum. You know, our country, we put in place these laws to try to help people, and they're abusing these to flood the zone. It's intentional because they know how hard it will be to remove them. Right now, think about this. Democrats are doubling down on this guy. Imagine what they'll do when it is the, grandmother, who is not a criminal or doesn't have a criminal history, who came here illegally and was wrongfully paroled into the United States, put ahead of other people, flooding our zone, burdening our systems, and Medicaid and hospital and all that, but isn't a criminal. You know how that will go. And to your point about the numbers, okay, this is why the president and why his team are fighting this so hard. The president needs to have significant authority, and I believe does, to push back and release people who were wrongfully put into the United States who are citizens of other countries. It is the only way to have a sovereign nation. I believe that the president, I believe the vice president, I believe Stephen Miller, I believe Tom Homan, I believe they are all correct when they are trying to push back on that notion.
Speaking to Congressman Chip Roy out of Texas, a congressman, and what is it that I asked Clay this yesterday. We tried to walk through this. So to make the Democrats who are going down to El Salvador, not for vacation, but to meet with Abrego Garcia, to make them happy, Trump would negotiate I guess, a deal or put in a request with Bukele, the president of El Salvador, to bring this illegal back to America so that then we could say, hey, he's an illegal and send him back to El Salvador? Or is it just that they want to bring him back and then try to jam up the process so he gets to stay? Like, what is their preferred outcome?
The goal of Democrats is to empower courts to be able to process every single individual who was paroled into the United States or released into the United States under asylum laws under Biden, which is millions of people, and to be able to say that each one of them has an individual claim and due process right to get into court to adjudicate the claim. And I don't believe that is accurate, right? They had an administrative process for going through and determining what their status is. But they do not, this is not due process in the sense, for all your listeners out there, right? These individuals aren't charged with a crime like murder. As a non-citizen, they come in here and they murder somebody. Some of them are, by the way. But in this question, it's not that as to whether, okay, are they getting due process? Are they getting a lawyer? Are they getting a chance to go into court and prove their guilt or innocence? This is literally a question of status. And it's an administrative process, and they're trying to get into court. So, yeah, Stephen Miller outlined this pretty well when you described the situation with Garcia down in El Salvador, is saying, well, okay, you want to fly him back here? Well, we can release him to some other country, right? So even if you accept that we can't send him to El Salvador because he's threatened by some other gang, which was his position 5 years ago, he would still be deportable to another country because a judge has already issued a order of removal. And that is not, to the best of my understanding, appealable other than in the context of the administrative proceedings in question. It's not a due process claim. So this is what Democrats are trying to do. They're trying to game the system in order to achieve their objective of NGOs going into court and filing suit on every individual who is released into our country. So the president cannot release or remove them by class as Joe Biden allowed them to come in by class.
Congressman Chip Roy with us right now. Earlier this show, we started off with a clip that I bet you've seen that has gone viral of Elizabeth Warren trying to explain why she in any way backed the mental and physical fitness of Joe Biden. I'm curious, what is the long-term fallout in your mind of the biggest lie that's been told in a very, very long time when it comes to the legacy media? And also, behind the scenes, were Democrats in Congress, were they acknowledging that they thought there were issues with Biden, but they wouldn't say it publicly? How much discussion do you think there was among Democrats about what all of us, and certainly we've been talking about on this show for years, could clearly see?
Well, to the second question, which relates to the first, for the most part, my Democrat colleagues, I mean, I had a handful of friends who would very honestly and openly acknowledge their concerns when you'd have a private conversation, but they were very tight-lipped about it publicly because the overwhelming motivating factor for Democrats for the last 9 years has been hostility to Donald Trump. That's it. That has literally been their entire motivating factor. So it did not matter to them that Joe Biden was very clearly mentally not present. I don't know if you all remember, but last July, after the debate,
I think we lost
it there for a sec. It broke up. See if we can get him back here a sec to finish up the interview. The other thing that's floating around out there, Buck, is all these books coming out. I wonder on some level whether the Abreu Garcia conversation and everything else is a desperate attempt to keep people from looking at all of these stories that come out. I understand it's in the past, but it's such a miscalculation to me to focus on Abreu Garcia as the front-facing element of the Trump deportation policies that I just find it almost incomprehensibly dumb that this could be as calculated of a decision as it appears to be, that you could decide, hey, this is the ground upon which we want to fight. And I think we've got Congressman Chip Roy back with us right now.
Yeah, sorry about that, Clay. All I was saying was I introduced a resolution calling on the vice president to carry out the 25th Amendment, right? And why I did that was because it was I wanted to call the question because it was important that the question get called. But to your point, Democrats, let's get back to the core basis, which, by the way, relates to the border issue and immigration. They don't care. It's all about political power. It is literally all about political power. And I wish I didn't have to say that, right? I mean, it oughtn't to be that way. I ought to be able to sit down with some of my Democrat colleagues and figure out, like, issues that are important for our people. But right now it is animus towards Trump, and it is about opening the floodgates to people to try to build a political base for themselves for power. And that's it. That is driving everything they are doing. It's about political power.
Congressman Roy, appreciate you being with us, sir. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
We'll break down a little bit more of that when we come back. We'll take more of your talkbacks as well. But I want to tell you, Tunnel to Towers does incredible work. I was down at the West Palm Beach Trump Golf Course a couple of weeks ago. They raise millions of dollars there. I know they're going to be having a big event at Bedminster, another event here in Nashville. I'm going to be on the road for some of those, may not be able to play, but I was up at Liberty National raising millions of dollars for them. And the work that they do is truly inspiring because they help take care of heroes like firefighter James Dickman, passionate about fire safety, aspired to do everything in his power to keep his community and fellow firefighters safe. While responding to an apartment fire, James and his crew tried to save the people thought to be trapped inside. And when the situation escalated and the fire got worse, James was not able to escape. He died in the blazing inferno there. Cause of the fire, arson. James leaves behind his loving wife, Jamie, and their children, Paige and Grant. Tunnel to Towers gave the Dickman family the gift of a mortgage-free home, and Jamie, his wife, is grateful to Tunnel to Towers and to caring friends like you for lifting the financial burden of a mortgage